Welcome back to the PHX Founders Podcast. Glad to be here for part 2 of our interview on Trainual with Chris Ronzio, and we're introducing a new part of the podcast here. Johnathan Ronzio is co-founder. So welcome back, guys. Good to have you to talk about how you've scaled Trainual. So in the first part of our last episode, we talked about some of the backstory, Chris, of how you started Trainual, even some of your upbringing and how that led some of your great entrepreneurial stories early on. And then we talked also about how the consulting business started to move into becoming what is now Trainual. But we really want to dive into the specifics of Trainual and how you've built really one of the fastest growing and most meaningful software companies, at least in recent years in Arizona. So we're excited to talk about the specific Trainual story with Johnathan here today too. Allie, did you have something you wanted to jump into first, or you want to take us back?
I do, but Johnathan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Let's do that.
To our listeners?
No relation.
Sure, yeah. What did you say earlier? Part 2 of the podcast, also part 2 in the family. Chris is 3.5 years older, but we've been building together our whole lives.
Do your parents call you number 2?
Behind his back.
So I'm Johnathan Ronzio. My background is not in software whatsoever, nor is Chris's, but prior to the consulting company. But we've just had a very fun last 5 years building Trainual. It's been awesome. I can't wait to dig into these stories. Happy to be here.
Awesome. And you're CMO of Trainual
Yeah,
now. Yes.
CMO, effective CRO.
Great. Can we take a step back to the earlier days when Chris called you? Because marketing is a critical piece of sustained growth for most startups. And a lot of them don't know how to figure out how to do that. So especially because they have really tight budgets. So can you tell us how you figured out how you wanted to approach marketing in those early days and how you fit it into your budget, which you said was really small at the time?
Or non-existent.
Yeah, non-existent,
yeah.
Except for a credit card line, really.
Yeah.
I mean, in the earliest days, so it was fall of 2017. Chris and I started talking about this. I knew that he was looking to spin Trainual out of the consulting company, just seeing that this was the scalable thing, not his time. And my background is in adventure. I was climbing all around the world. I was doing content for outdoor industry and brands, and a lot of brand marketing and consulting, even for some of his consulting clients out here. And so I just had a whole wealth of a background of brand storytelling from both like the social media side and even just motivational speaking stuff through my adventure. So I knew storytelling. Chris came to me with this project, essentially, more so than saying like, hey, do you want to co-found this thing with me? It was
less of a business.
Yeah, it was
definitely more of a project.
It was like, I've got this software thing. I know you've tried it. I know I've talked about it before, but like, what do you think we can do to get a website going? What do you think we can do to get a sales page written? And so it just happened to work out timing wise that I was excited about working together again. It had been probably 6 years since we had really collaborated on anything. And so I moved out here. I'm originally in the Boston area, but I moved out here at the time to help get this thing off the ground. End of 2018 and at the end of 2017, start of 2018. And I mean, our marketing at the beginning was no budget. It was just like me with an iPhone and spinning up a website and getting scrappy with like whatever we could film downtown Phoenix, just me prompting Chris of like, let's create some content about this entrepreneurial mind. What is this problem that Trainual is solving? And I happen to be uniquely positioned to pull that story out of Chris because him as the entrepreneur, the target buyer, right? I knew the problems that he faced through all the entrepreneurial endeavors our whole lives. And he was always the one that became a master of delegation because I was the one he delegated everything to. Right, like as the little brother, he would just give me everything, and he
became a master of doing.
Yeah, and so I found my pride in figuring out how to get things done that he was giving me, and so it was a great dynamic. But I knew those challenges that entrepreneurs and specifically Chris faced at the time to unpack. Like, what is that pain point of trying to hand something off and get it done? What is that pain point of trying to train somebody to do the thing that you used to do? And so we were able to just take a camera and walk down the streets of Phoenix and Scottsdale and wherever else and create some really fun, authentic videos that we were able to put out, and that resonated.
I think there were two kind of magical things. One was like he said, I was the persona.
Yeah.
So I had that expertise. I was inside the mind of the buyer. I knew who we were selling to. I had all my personal stories from my last couple businesses. And then Johnathan had all this production storytelling ability. And the fact that we were brothers meant that we didn't tiptoe around each other. He would just start recording, put the camera in my face, and be like, hey, talk about this. And then he would be like, that sucked, do it over. You know? And so we went back and forth and just shot a ton of these super easy, authentic videos on take 300 that, you know, seemed authentic because we were really comfortable with each other.
And then what did you do with those videos? Because you turned them into something that was building your pipeline.
Yeah. So initially, this is prior to us really doing any advertising. This was like around when we did the launch party at the Saguaro, and we just had the website, and you know, we had the social handles and stuff. So we put that up. But at the start of it, it was really just about how to leverage your network right here in Phoenix, right? Like all of the people that you had consulted for that know about Trainual or that had used Trainual, how do we get to the 5 or 10 people they know? How do we get to the hundreds of people that you know on LinkedIn? And so we really started local and expanded into the network here.
Yeah, you imagine like these concentric circles of, you know, the tightest circle is all my consulting clients that I'd been working with inside their business. And then there's like the people that they know and the other entrepreneurs in the groups, the mastermind groups that I was in. And then it was like the friends of friends affiliate sort of stuff, you know, second connections on LinkedIn, or people I'd met over the years that I wasn't really close to. And so we just started in ground zero in that circle and then moved our way out. And we kept telling ourselves, like, if we can sell to the 30 people that I know really well, then how do we get 5 people that I don't know so well? And if we can get those 5 that I don't know as well, then we should be able to get 1 or 2 strangers to buy in on this problem. And that it was really validating every time we got to a new level of strangers.
Yeah, so a lot of that original content, it was, you know, we'd send it out to the email list that you had been curating through your, like, the 100 hacks book, right? Like you were putting out these tooltips of how to systemize a business or how to, like, be more efficient. You had been growing that for years and had a few thousand people on this list. So we sent stuff out with that. We created landing pages. We had people that attended the event that we were following up with. Early on, we were trying to get you on as many podcasts as possible. And so with those podcasts, it was, you know, you'd mention a website and then we'd come to that website. And then we started thinking through, well, how do we start retargeting this traffic that we're starting to build? We're starting to get awareness outside of the people we know. So how do we retain that attention and convert it?
Were you pretty intentional on the specific message? I mean, Johnathan, you guys both mentioned around you're targeting entrepreneurs, you're targeting, hey, how do you efficiently kind of control the chaos in your business? Were you, or did you have to experiment with different messaging? Like how much did the messaging land from right from when you launched, or did you have to iterate on the messaging over time?
It really landed right away for a couple different things. Like our first 2 ads that we made were like, one was, you know, the E-Myth Revisited, right? Michael Gerber. Yep. So that book, it was like anybody that has read that book, they're going to hear about Trainual and they're going to be like, oh, that is what I need, right? We didn't have to educate them on why. They already knew why. We just had to now give them what. And so the first ad we shot was Chris sitting at the conference room table of like the old office and him just holding up the book. That was like literally the starting frame. It was just holding this book and saying like, if you've read the E-Myth Revisited, then you know that, like, you know, you need to blah, 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 like went down that track.
Work on the business.
Yeah, exactly.
On,
not in.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you need a franchise prototype.
Right.
You need an operations manual, and Trainual is exactly that for your business. So click here and try it for free. You know, it was like this really simple ad, because what we're doing is we're leveraging the authority of Michael Gerber and his book and a brand that people know because it's been around for decades. And so it stopped people in their scroll a little bit. And they see that, and so that was the first thing. And with Facebook at the time, and you could speak way more to this, they had these like lookalike audiences of like anybody that would engage with your advertising that would clicked on that. Go find me a million other people like that. And that was really the start of our funnel, was just trying to find other pieces of content that we knew our buyer would connect with, and use that to build our own audience.
Yeah, I mean, we around the lookalike stuff, like initially we drove traffic with interest-based audiences. So anybody familiar with Facebook advertising knows that like you can create an audience off of people who like Shark Tank, off of people who like Gary Vaynerchuk, people who have read Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? And so we went down that thread of like, what are the top books that entrepreneurs read? What are the top like shows and celebrities that people follow, and we just built the initial audience off of that, started driving that traffic, and then we had that pixel of like, all right, if they actually click through, if they buy, if they start a trial, if they ask for a demo, we would fire those back to the platform and create lookalikes off of that, and so it just got smarter and smarter and smarter. The other message, so that one taught us about leveraging existing brand authority, which we leaned into in a big way over the next few years. The other message that really worked was we were at a conference out in San Diego, and like a learning and development industry show, trying to figure out what we didn't like about the industry, what not to do. And we were just walking outside. I pulled out my iPhone and just on the street started talking about a selfie video, just started talking about how like Chris literally used to have me take personality assessments so he could figure out how to hire people like me in his consulting business, because I wasn't working with him then, but he wanted people that he worked with as well as he worked with me. And so we just leaned into this concept of like, if you can't clone yourself, how do you clone your best people? And that message resonated with people in the sense of like, you can document everything in Trainual and essentially clone your processes or your best people's processes and the way that they work. And then that video took it from my phone, and instead of like editing anything really nice, actually like just did a personal Insta story and used the Insta story, like the Instagram text, the write over, and just wrote on the video with the Instagram text, and then saved that out and then ran that as an ad. And it was just like, again, talking about stopping your scroll, we just look like a friend in your feed that you forgot you followed when you...
It's not professional at all. It's me and
Totally
Johnathan
lo-fi.
on the street, holding up a phone, walking down the street, and you'd see that and you'd be like, do I follow these? Who are these people? Do I even know them? And the message resonated with people, and it was casual, it was easy, and that really blew up. Like we got a ton of people, like even celebrities commenting on that ad as they were seeing it on Instagram, which is cool.
I want to talk about celebrities in a minute, because I think you've done a good job leveraging celebrities like almost no one else I've seen. I think I've mistakenly differentiated sometimes between B2C marketing and B2B marketing. I think historically I've thought about those as distinctly different things, and you seem to have done a really good job of kind of bridging that gap. It feels very consumery, but you're targeting a business, like someone who owns a business. And so do you think there's is that an accurate, are they different? I guess, should they be different? It seems like you've done a really good job of proving to me they're not different.
I think it's B2P marketing.
Yeah.
It's like a business to a person, because even if you're advertising to another business, there's a person on the other end that has an Instagram account and has a Facebook account. And when we were first starting, the conventional wisdom was businesses B2B businesses aren't advertising on Facebook and Instagram. Like, that's for buying toothbrushes or whatever.
Yep.
And we realized, like, no, we are business owners and we look at those things. So who cares if I'm scrolling through at 11 o'clock at night and I see some ad? It's like, I've got that problem on my mind. So why not catch people where they are?
Yeah, in my mind, I think that's over. I don't see a separation between B2B and B2C anymore. I think that where that stems from is the legacy way that, software used to be exponentially more expensive. It was harder to come by. You had, IBM had their sales reps that would go out and try to nurture the sale with a procurement department, and it was just a more complex deal cycle. And today, that's not the case. And software has gotten cheaper and cheaper, and there's like free tools. There's, it's the
immediate sales cycles.
Yeah. So direct response works with B2B when you realize like, oh, I'm going after an operations manager and they care about this. I'm going after a talent manager and they care about this. And like, I don't know where my phone is right now, but like we spend all of our time on that. Everybody does. Like, it's just a matter of a few different apps that you have to think, how do I get in front of them? Where's their attention?
You don't need to name names, but what's an example of a really large customer that you have that has landed in that same way? Because I think it's easy. Maybe some of our listeners might be thinking, well, yeah, that's only true for SMB, but you clearly have some bigger customers that are using this too. So do you have any, like, this? You're clearly using these same tactics to acquire
like
pretty large
Stanford
customers.
University,
Yeah.
and like,
Is that how you got these big customers?
we don't have
we
didn't have a sales for it. It's
No.
like they saw our Instagram and Facebook ads. That's how we got all of our
amazing.
customers.
Wow. Do you have a sales force now?
So we have 5 inbound sales reps today. So we hired our first sales rep in the end of 2018, and that scaled to 5 as of this summer. But again, that's just inbound. There's no outbound hunting. It's just somebody coming to the site and They want a little extra hand-holding, right? But that's all driven from our advertising and our organic marketing. But we, as of a month ago, we just added 4 new outbound sales reps. So for the first time, we're adding this motion, scaling into some verticals where we know we have really strong, buyer match. But up until now, everything that we've scaled off of has been pure inbound.
Can I ask about the outbound real quick? But
Sure.
I don't want to lose sight of some of the great content you've pursued. So what is the goal with the outbound? You mentioned you've got 4 individuals and you've got target verticals.
Mm-hmm.
Is the idea that you've got these great case studies, we just need to get these case studies in front of people that look like these other large accounts? Or how do you think about outbound? Can you give a little more thoughts on
totally. So we hired 2 on one vertical and 2 on another. So we're benchmarking against the 2v2 kind of model there. So it's not just like one on, not being able to measure anything against each other, right? But it's a matter of just how do we get more awareness, more attention, right? And there's things we can do with sponsoring events. There's things we can do with partnerships. There's things we can do with ads that are targeting that persona. But at the end of the day, also, can you email? Can you text? Can you call? Can you go to some networking meetups? Yeah, of course. It's just additional touch points to get into their world. And so for the first time, we thought that we have enough certainty for our ICP in these specific verticals. We have the proof points that might as well step into it and see if we can just add additional revenue channels from places where we're already playing.
I think there's this, just in the same way that B2B and B2C marketing seem to be converging, I think outbound and inbound are converging.
I think that's true.
Yeah, because with inbound, you're doing all this activity to get people to go to your website and sign up for a trial, and it's like you're putting stuff out into the world to create inbound. And so in the same way that we might spend $1,000 on an ad to get someone into our product, why wouldn't we just pay an influencer $1,000 or pay a sales rep $1,000? It's like, hey, I'm cutting $1,000 checks. I don't care how they sign up for Trainual. Like if you are the type of person that can go network at an event and bring back this many signups, then I'll pay you. It's like the outbound and inbound, I think, are growing together.
Yeah, just another acquisition channel to add.
I would totally agree with that. And outbound selling has its own challenges too. So what learnings have you had so far since you started outbound selling?
It's brand new.
It's like weeks in.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's brand new. But I'll tell you, my aversion to starting outbound is that I hate getting sold outbound personally, right? And this you go back to the golden rule of like do to others as you want done to yourself, right? I don't like getting cold calls. I don't like people blowing up my LinkedIn inbox with like pitches right after connecting or even at the time of connecting, right? So my thought process in trying to go about this is how do we do it in a way that is a value add and not an annoyance. That's kind of the golden rule we're trying to figure out, and maybe we'll circle back in a couple months to let you know how we net out. But that's really the marching orders is like don't annoy anyone ever, but figure out a way to bring value and generate attention and awareness.
Well, I think you guys have a strong value proposition. The Trainual value proposition is pretty strong, right? It's about efficiency, and retention. Like I think there's a lot of good messages in there that really could resonate in outbound and feel helpful, right? Feel consultative and helpful done correctly. But I get your point about I'd say like half of all people that connect with me on LinkedIn immediately follow up with something selling, and it's pretty annoying. Mm-hmm. You mentioned influencer. Tell us about from walking the streets of Phoenix to like the evolution of your content, because I do think that's just so interesting to me about how the content has evolved and just the maturity of the content and the relationships you have around the table are really unbelievable to me.
I think we've done a good job at parlaying authority. So we started with Michael Gerber's book, and we're putting that ad out there, and then predictably, like someone that knows him sees this ad and tells him like there's people running an ad with your book. So we get in touch with him and decide to become friends instead of it being like a contentious sort of thing. And so I talked to him, I got introduced. He said, hey, you should come out to California sometime. I said, how about tomorrow? And I booked a ticket and flew out and spent the day with him and his wife. And 4 years later, he writes the opening to my book. And so then once we've got Michael Gerber as an advocate and people know that, it's easy to go to the next influencer and say, oh yeah, I'm sure you've read the E-Myth, like, yeah, he's one of our advisors, and like, I'd love for you to be an advisor too. And then that next person's a little more interested than if they were cold pitched. And so I think for any business that's getting started, you have to get that authority, whether it's the big logos that are your customers or influencers that are channels to help you get business. And so we kept doing that. We found, another influencer advisor kind of person in the software world. We found Gary Vee. We've done a lot with Gary Vaynerchuk. We've hosted events and had speakers come in, because if I can be interviewing Gary Vee or the founder of some big company, or even athletes, like we had Shaquille O'Neal come in, then we can take that content and show that we're hosting this event or we did this interview, and now we put it out into the world and we've increased our own authority just a little bit. And so we've done this over and over and over again. And so you could talk maybe to some of the more like celebrity things that we've done.
Yeah, I think it's about like, where is your consumer's attention is really the golden question, right? And for that, like if I was trying to be a physical trainer, I'm not just gonna go show up at like, Tempe Town Lake and expect that I'm gonna get 500 people to show up and want to be trained by me, like out of the blue. I'm gonna go to all the like local gyms and see like, can I do a class here? Can I do a class here? And start to build relationships where people are already going. And then maybe in a year, I can have 500 people show up because they've taken different classes with me elsewhere. So it's like that model. We were like, where are people already paying attention? Who are they paying attention to? And, back in early 2019, Cameo, right? So Cameo had just kind of hit the stage. Nobody really knew about it. And we saw that like Bethany Frankel and Kevin O'Leary were on there, and Bethany being a guest shark, Kevin obviously being a shark, and Shark Tank we were already using as one of our like interest-based audiences that we knew was working on Facebook. And so we wrote up some scripts and got videos back from both of them. And
hold on, and there was Cameo at the time was like birthday shout-outs.
Yes.
There was no corporate anything, and we figured this pitch is going to totally get rejected, but we're for $300 or $500 or whatever it was, we wrote out a pitch for Mr. Wonderful to deliver about how great Trainual was. And
we got it back. And like from both of them.
And not just any pitch. It was like he took it to the next level. He was playing his guitar.
Yeah.
He made up like a little song about how Trainual is such a great idea. And like, why doesn't everybody do this? And for hundreds of dollars.
Seriously, yeah.
We had this video that just blew up. And so we used it for months and months until Cameo told us, hey, stop that. And
this was before they had like any kind of corporate offering, right? And so, I remember sitting in a bar and looking at my email, and it was like legal from Cameo. They were like, you got to stop running these as ads. We're like, oh, oops, all right, like, sure. But
how many ads did you get out before they?
Well, the two from Bethany and Mr. Wonderful that we were running.
Times.
I mean, we had hundreds of thousands of impressions on both of them.
Yeah.
And they were converting. And so that's what we learned though in doing that.
I didn't want anyone to find out about Cameo. Like Cameo was on the rise, and people would ask me, I'm like, oh yeah, it's a friend of a friend. Like, Mr. Wonderful.
But in doing that, running those ads, we saw that like our cost per trial was a third of what it was normally. And so it just, again, fed the fuel of understanding like, oh, we're leveraging existing brand authority to get Trainual in front of more people. And this works. And so that was like, all right, well, we see the unit economics of how much we save to drive a trial and eventually a customer. So we can actually go do a legit deal with some celebrities. And that's what brought us to, later that year, it was the Office characters. Yeah. So
I remember that campaign for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
That wasn't through Cameo. That was through you contract with them directly.
Yeah. So this was a crazy. So we were at another conference and we saw Stanley from The Office,
David Baker,
yeah. On somebody's banner. Like he was like, I don't even remember what it was. They were giving away like pretzels and pens, and they had a picture of Stanley, and it didn't make any sense at all. But we thought like, oh, if he does ads, maybe like that would be really cool. We could try to get him. And so I remember Johnathan and I are flying home from this conference, and we're in the airport lounge, and I'm like Instagram DMing everyone related to The Office. And within like 15 minutes, I hear back from Stanley's agent or whatever email address was listed on his Instagram. And I get on the phone with this guy, and I explain what we want to do. And he tells me that like, yep, we can get it done. And I need you to send me $1,000 on PayPal as a good faith kind of deposit. And so I look at Johnathan, I'm like,
Is this real?
Am I just is this some random person that I'm sending $1,000 to? All right, let's try it. So I sent $1,000. It was a super sketchy period of a few weeks, and eventually we pay the rest and we get this video back. And it was probably the riskiest thing I feel like we ever did in the business, was just shelling out thousands of dollars to some celebrity's friend and hoping that they were going to shoot a video for us.
And they did.
And they did.
And this led into the pandemic, right? So this was also, fortunately, at the time when these kind of selfie, lo-fi celebrity videos were also becoming more of the norm, but not yet the norm.
Yeah.
And so it was still unique to see that kind of a thing in the feed. And so we got Stanley, and then after that was working well. We're like, who else do you know in the office? How can you get it? And so they ended up getting Meredith and Brian, yes, who played Kevin. Yeah. So, and then the three of them, we spliced into a mashup of all of them talking about Trainual, of just lines that I texted this guy. Literally, we didn't talk to them. I just texted them lines, and they sent us back these videos, and we edited it together. And it was, I think, the first video that the three of them had been in together since The Office was off air.
Oh, wow.
And we were running it as our ad, and that to this day has tens of millions of impressions or more.
So ballpark, what was the cost of that ad? Just if curiosity.
It was maybe $20,000.
And had huge payback for you.
Oh yeah.
Oh, immense. Yeah.
And it sounds like your marketing has been part risk-taking, part intuition, part following the data. And as you scale, is it staying even, or are you veering more into one side versus the other?
I think in that order.
Yeah.
Risk,
In that order, yeah.
intuition, and then following the data.
You guys have an orientation around experimentation, the data and experimentation.
Yeah.
It's fundamental to who you are.
And we try so many things. In any given month, we do a bunch of different experimental videos. We had you remember when the Boring Company released those flamethrowers?
Yeah.
They were a client of ours, actually. They were using Trainual at the time. We got a flamethrower and torched a bunch of operations manuals as that'll be fun. And then we've done things about getting stuff off your plate and vacuuming up knowledge.
Yeah,
and
it's
any crazy idea that we come up with. Between Johnathan and our in-house videographer, there's ads out that month. We've used a lot of public domain footage. If anybody's seen our newer ads that are it's how people went through an orientation in the 1950s or something. And what's the call to action? It's why has nothing changed since?
Yeah, I mean, onboarding and training hasn't changed in 50 years or 70 years or something like that. And it was just one. I was looking through the Prelinger archives, I think it's called, and just realizing that there's all this legacy footage from way back in the day that's just public domain that nobody's using. And I was like, let's just make ads that because I noticed this trend of people, on TikTok or on Instagram Reels or Facebook, you'd see a lot of just Paris in 1902 and engagement off the roof because people are entranced by history. And so we're let's just pull from history and turn that into modern ads. And I would do old timey kind of get your business out of your brain, that training. I was doing that kind of stuff on these ads and just having a ton of fun with it.
I think what you just said there is important though. So much of it is just what's trending and being consumers ourselves on the platforms that we want to advertise on to see what's working. And then a lot of our advertising ideas stem from just the two of us texting each other late at night and saying hey, wouldn't it be funny if, or wouldn't it be cool if, and then eventually we get the team around it and it happens.
Tell us about something that you thought would be really cool and successful and it totally flopped.
Do you remember the game Heads Up?
Oh, sure.
Right, the little iPhone thing. So I was just seeing a lot of people share their Heads Up videos, right? Because when you play, it records the video, and then you can start to share that on social, and it's fun because you see the POV of everybody guessing in your face. And so my idea was all right, let's show the POV from Heads Up, as if we're sharing the recording of that, but have the clue be Trainual. And so initially, to get people hooked in, you just see 4 people on a couch, and the clue is Central Perk, and they're yelling it's on Friends where Gunther works, and then the next clue is Michael Scott, and they're like, oh, it's the boss from The Office. And then the next clue is Trainual. And now you have the couch yelling all of the value props of Trainual. They're like, oh, it's like onboarding and training software for small business, and like you use it to, right? and I thought that was going to be so clever.
It's a great ad. It really is good.
But that one just didn't work. I think it just took too long to get to the punchline.
Were you bummed?
I was bummed, but you know what? It's like, again, Chris said we've had tens, hundreds of those. So it's just like keep pursuing the next idea.
I love it.
You have to be willing to fail. That's what you're saying.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, all the time. Yeah, we had another thing. We tried to go all in on sheep because the Dolly cloning sheep thing. Like we were like,
you rarely hear someone say we tried to go all in on sheep.
Yeah.
Go on.
So we were. The cloning ad that we had worked so well, and so we thought, oh, what is the image of cloning something? And it was like that sheep that they cloned at the beginning, and so we thought, like, let's do a bunch of campaigns around sheep. And we sponsored this event. We had like sheep T-shirts we were giving out. It was like postcards with this sheep call to action. It was like, don't use bad software or something like that. Just like horrible puns. And that didn't work.
No. But we took that the clone yourself message, and what did work, a couple years later, is like just randomly one night I'm scrolling through TikTok and I see this incredible claymation artist just making, like, it takes however many hours. Like you see the clock just going like this as he's showing how he's like making these little clay figures and scenes. And I just DM'd him. I was like, hey, I'd love to work with you. Like I have an idea that I think will be really cool. And so I'm just trying to figure out like what is so unique that it stops me. And I'm like, wow, that's cool. And then we got this artist to actually like take this, get your business out of your brain, clone yourself message, and bring it to life in a way that you get this like little clay guy that sits at a desk, puts on a helmet, and all of a sudden 4 new same clay guys pump out of the wires of his helmet into their own little desks. And that worked great. So we got like a little more abstract with the clone yourself thing. But the sheep didn't work.
There's also a timing aspect. Like we had, leading up to the last presidential election, there was this comedian that was kind of doing bits on both sides, and it was really funny. He was impersonating both of them. And so we had this idea of like, what if the White House used Trainual for like the handoff between presidents? And so we went in and we hired this comedian. We did this whole thing, and then we never ran it because there was such controversy around the election. We're like, well, we don't want to wade into that. Yeah, we don't want to mess with that. And so some things you just have to throw away, or they don't work like you think.
Maybe next time.
Yeah.
It's always
back pocket. Yeah.
A couple more questions about. Because I feel like this part of the conversation wouldn't be complete without talking about This Is the Way We Do It and Dave and John, like 2 other celebrities that seem to have been really influential on Trainual, at least from my perception here. But any other commentary on how that came about, and like is that this is what's most memorable to me. This is the Montel Jordan song here.
This is how we do it.
Yes, that one.
Yeah, so we played that song at like all of our company meetings because Trainual standard operating procedures, right? This is how we do it. It's like it was our anthem. And so Johnathan and I joked about it back in 2018, 2019, like how could we get Montel? This would be cool. And so after we had the success with the Office characters, the Office actors and actresses, we knew about Cameo. We had done that in the past, but now we were like legitimizing it through real relationships. And so we started poking around on Cameo, who rolled out a commercial offering at the time, to see who else is doing this kind of work that might be interested. And when I saw Montel, did I see it or did you see Montel?
It wasn't the commercial thing they rolled out. It was that they rolled out the ability to book a Zoom call with some people.
I meant commercial, like business.
But I forget who found it.
So one of us found that you could book a Zoom call with Montel. And we were like, oh my gosh, we got to just get in front of him and get introduced to him. So we got the Zoom call with him. And it was me and Johnathan and another member of the marketing team. And we kind of just told him about our business. And we asked him if he could record a little video for our employees going into the holidays. And he started singing his song. And he's like, and Trainual does it like nobody does. Like he's yes. rolling into it. And so after that, we're like, we should do something together. Like we have a business this is how you do it. That's what you do. And then like click, the Zoom goes off. Like Cameo moderators shut us down.
Oh, really?
And so, but like moments later, Johnathan gets a tweet, a private tweet from Montel saying like, hey, I think that's a cool collaboration. Like, here's my email address.
Yeah.
And so we start going back and forth with him, and you should tell the rest of the story.
And this happened. You mentioned Damon John as well, so I'm going to bring him into it. We had done our first event. It was Playbook 2020, November of 2020, and Damon was our like opening speaker that we paid to do the keynote interview. And so when we did that with Damon, his people ended up messaging me after the event and saying like, hey, Damon was super impressed with you guys and loves your product and loves your like focus on this. Let's talk and see if there's a partnership opportunity here. And so that all those conversations are happening. And then we get this connection, this in with Montel. And so then we start thinking like, well, what do we do with Montel? Obviously we have to do something with this song or some remix of it. And so my background is also in music. So I just, played in bands all through middle school and high school and played like acoustic shows all through college. I've always been a singer-songwriter. And so this was like a dream to me. It was like, oh my God, I'm going to produce music with Montel Jordan. I get to co-write a song with him. And so that was the pitch. It was like, hey, rather than talking about like it's Friday night and we're going out and drinking and everything, like let's come up with this a remix that's like brings a new song to life that is like an entrepreneurial anthem. That's a callback to the original. That still feels like the same hook, but that is a new cool song that we can use for all of our advertising. And initially, he was like, yeah, that sounds cool. And then we started writing the lyrics, and he was writing like a commercial, because I think he's done commercials like that. And it was like all Trainual promo. And I was like, no, I want people to listen to this even if they don't know Trainual. I want Trainual to be an artist on it, but I want this to be on somebody's gym playlist and it not feel like an ad. This has to be cool. And then we're just going to use it for our ads. And so so we worked together with Montel, brought this song to life. This Is How You Do It is the remix. So check it out, Spotify. Anybody that
it's a good one.
Yeah, we have more plays on Spotify than any SaaS company. I promise you.
I love that.
And so we were at the same time, we had locked in our partnership with Damon John. He was really excited to do stuff. We were going to shoot a commercial in Brooklyn. And then I was like, oh, well, let's bring Montel into this. Let's get the two of them together, because they both came up at the same time. Like 94, 95 is when the song first popped for Montel. It was when FUBU took off for Damon. It's this like callback to the 90s, which is resonant with the age persona or the age group of our target buyer persona. Right. And so it was like, there's like the stars are aligning on this. And so we ended up doing a whole like 5-part ad commercial campaign, a music video with the both of them, and got like tons of promo shots. We ended like actually in Sky Harbor for probably a year. If you were flying in and out of here in 2021, you would have saw Damon.
I saw the signs.
Yeah, Damon and Montel and Trainual on the banner that released at the same time as the song. And so it just became this massive multi-part campaign. There was out of home, there was advertising, there was print, there, of course, social. We were running TV ads. Damon was posting about it. Montel was posting about it. Montel was, promoting the song everywhere and driving. Like, it was like the top 3 most popular songs of his for like a year. It was really, really cool. And that was a dream come true. And for me, in terms of how to combine what we're trying to do with Trainual with my background of music and just love for creative marketing.
That's amazing. That's a cool story. I wanted to tie something off here on this part, because I think there's so many great lessons in what you've shared about experimentation around marketing, taking some risks, and all the way through just being data-driven, as Ali mentioned. But I don't want the listeners to get the idea that this is just about creative marketing. The thing that you guys have done, I think, really well here is you've never gotten off message. And you talked about Playbook 2020. I mean, you've done a great job around category creation. So this marketing effort has been a tailwind toward your category creation efforts. And I think sometimes people think those are, maybe you're just good at marketing so people buy your stuff, and that's not the case. So can you talk a little bit about category creation and the strategy of creating the business playbook category and how marketing has supported that?
Yeah, so late 2019, we were actually at your office. You had Anthony there.
Yes,
Kanata.
Anthony Kanata.
Yeah, and he was talking about category creation from his experience at Gainsight. And we were sitting in the back, and it was me and Johnathan, one of our other marketing team members, and we're just like, what is our category? What do we want to be known for? What's the cool word? And we just kept saying playbook, business playbook. It was like a simple thing to talk about. We've always kind of straddled this operations and HR space. It's like, it's the people in your business, it's who does what, it's how do you do things. And we didn't like knowledge management or learning management or L&D. It didn't feel sexy enough. And so we wanted to go all in on business playbook. And so that became, in that room at your office.
I love that.
We bought 10 years of domains for the event we were going to host.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that's where Playbook came from, and then it became the name of my book, and it became the name of so much of the stuff that we've done since then. So
yeah, Playbook feels to me. I mean, I haven't surveyed the market here, but those other things, L&D and knowledge management,
and governance.
those are not ownable and they're not interesting, right? Business Playbook is like you guys. I feel like you guys own that category. And it's interesting. So
we actually own the trademark to it as well. We trademark Business Playbook, and we have businessplaybook.com as the domain. And so that's become a discussion of ours in the last couple years. Is this something that we want to own and it to be exclusively ours, or is this a category that we want other people to use? Because when we started seeing competitors say that they were Business Playbook software, we weren't sure whether to be happy about it or.
We knew we achieved the goal we set out
when people started you.
calling us the same or calling them the same thing.
I mean, your
started
category.
Copying us. Yeah.
Did you own the
but it was
search term
uncomfortable.
by then?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably helped then.
Yeah, but it is still uncomfortable because it feels like so much of our identity of the brand is wrapped in that IP. And Chris literally has the book, the Business Playbook, right? So like.
But it's also, like part of what we've learned about the category thing is that when you're pioneering a category, when it's a term that people don't know, there's a huge educational burden
for sure
on you to be able to teach that. And so what we've even seen is that our top of funnel sales and it's hard to lead with the Business Playbook.
Right.
We talk about with our customer base that this is what we are, and we're trying to get that grassroots kind of exposure that this term rises up. But we still, with our inbound sales, with our marketing, our headlines, like if it just says we're Business Playbook software, people are like, well, what is that? They don't get it right away.
Yeah, it's hard to, you can't explain Business Playbook in, a five word headline, right?
Yeah.
But that's the nature, I think,
all
of
the knowledge in your business.
Yeah.
I think you snuck a word in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's amazing. Whenever you see the intersection here of just great marketing behind category creation efforts, to me, there's a lot of magic there. Anything we missed on either kind of marketing or category that you want to share? Lessons learned, things that founders listening to this or company builders listening to this could learn.
Yeah, I think just everybody tends to get in their own way and overcomplicate everything. And that's so much of what worked for us was just leaning into every idea as quick as possible, right? Like buying the domains in your office the second we thought of the conference name and just committing to it and saying, let's just do it, right? DMing or sending the $1,000 to reserve the office character, even if we didn't know what would happen, right? It was just like when an opportunity strikes, and meaning an opportunity meaning an idea, when an idea strikes, if you have the intuition, if you're confident in your mission and your product and you know your buyer, like just lean into as much as you can, as fast as you can, because the momentum builds. Not everything will work, but the momentum just definitely builds and you gain confidence in doing that. And so then it allows you to put data as the third thing on the list that you mentioned, right? Because the more you do it, the more that you hone the skill of your intuition and allow yourself to have confidence in your creativity.
And then the other thing I would say is think about derivative ROI, not direct ROI. Because when people are making investments in marketing, a lot of times they expect that this is going to pencil out immediately. I'm going to put some dollars out. I'm going to get some customers back. And we saw time and again that we were making big investments in brand, again, that we could parlay into other meaningful connections. And so when we decide to buy a bunch of airport banners in Sky Harbor, it's not because we think we're going to sell a ton of Trainual accounts. It's because we're raising money and we want the investors that are walking through the airport airport to have seen the Trainual logo, or we want people that are friends of ours in Phoenix to be taking selfies in front of these things and posting them online.
I did that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Then and tagging us on social, and it creates this like ripple effect of, oh, they're a bigger company than I think they're a bigger company than they actually are. And so you've got to realize that some of the investments you make are to get you derivative ROI and not just direct signups.
I think that's a great distinction. I also think some people could use the word derivative ROI for reckless spending. Hey, I'm just doing this for derivative ROI. And you guys have not done that. I mean, you're a very metric-driven organization. Like, that's a fundamental to who you are. So I do think, I think sometimes people think, like, advertising is pretty soft, right? It's hard to know what the actual attribution is. Attribution's tough, but you guys also have overlaid this with being a very metric-driven culture to test and experiment.
So we've always had a form when you sign up for a trial, just how did you hear about us, right? And it's a drop-down. Most of the sources, even if you select it, the podcast, right? We don't just leave it at that. We let you write it in, right? Community, event, write in. And it's a forced write-in. And so that paired with, of course, we have attribution, models and software, but that paired with it to create like more of a hybrid model of how we look at it allows us to say the airport banners actually worked, right? Like, enough people chose airport. And when we did those, every time we invest in the airport banner, we also do Facebook and Instagram ads geolocated into like the 20 miles radius of that airport for people that have recently traveled. And so it's like, even if you didn't realize that you walked under that banner, it's going to be like subconsciously in the back of your mind. And then you see the thing and you're like, oh, I recognize that. And so like that was part of how we did it. But then we also saw that the actual CAC on those airport banners was as good as anything else we were running, just by people selecting airport as like, how did you hear about us?
Interesting.
So we're always hedging our bet with how do we make sure that this pencils out. But not everything has to.
Yeah, you have to have some things that are converting really well, and then some things that you have no freaking idea.
Yeah.
It's a spectrum that averages out to a palatable number.
Well, I think that's an important point to make, because I think a lot of startup CEOs think, okay, I've got this small budget. I know I have to have this. I have to have that. Am I going to spend this amount on something that I don't know if it's going to give me ROI? That's a really scary thing for most CEOs, and you've taken that risk. And gotten results from it.
Yeah, and I always say too that, like, when you first invest in something, it's like, if you were to say what are the odds of getting heads or tails when I flip a coin, it's 50-50, but you might flip 5 tails in a row, and so if you underinvest, you're never going to get to the statistically significant actual cost of acquisition. And so you have to be able to invest a multiple of whatever you think it's going to be to get a customer to see if a channel really works.
When we first started running Facebook ads, our initial budget was $4,000 a month. We did that for like 2 months, but during those 2 months period, that $4,000 was like we had an external contractor that was basically, giving us the best practices for how to spend that and what to run, and trying to drive people into this multi-step thing of like capture the lead and then get them into a webinar, and then that goes into sales drip. And after 2 months of just basically like no results, we fired them, and I just took the videos that we were creating and built that audience, and we threw $40,000 at it. And that was just the next month step up, and we were just like, let's just see if this works. And because we had confidence in some of the early signals from those videos that the message resonated, we're like, let's just cut out every other step of the process and just try direct response. This video to trial, can we get people interested? And of course, it wasn't like, on Facebook, you don't write a $40,000 check in one day. You can turn it off at any time, but that's what we spent over that month of seeing that, okay, we're willing to spend 3 to 4x in a day what we would expect to get somebody in a trial for, because you need to let that run for a week to see if, like, oh, you spend $1,200 for no results one day, but then you spend the same amount and you get 4 the next day. And then just after a week, does it even out? Cool, scale it 20 to 30%. Keep running.
Having enough data to actually make good decisions, I think a lot of us maybe give up too soon. Mm-hmm. So there's such a thing as overinvesting and such a thing as underinvesting. I think is a good observation. Anything else, Allie, we should ask about before we go to closing questions?
No, let's go to the closing questions.
You sure?
Yeah, I want to know what they're most grateful for.
All right. Well, let's start with that. What are each of you most thankful for? So we have 2 closing questions. What's something in your life that you're super thankful for?
I mean, I'm not pandering because he's next to me, but I'm grateful to get to work with my brother. I think it's really cool, and we have an awesome working relationship, and we complement each other well. So I think I pinch myself sometimes that, like, we get to work together and we've built what we've built.
That's awesome. Except Johnathan, now you can't say you're most thankful for Chris. You can't say that. You got to pick something else.
I will pick our parents because I think that, they raised us in a way that allowed us both to be where we are today and fostered that sibling dynamic that I think is not the norm for a lot of people. I think that's one of the most common questions we've got anytime we've done events or interviews. It's like, oh, you guys are brothers in business together? How does that family dynamic work? And we've just never been combative in any way. We've always been best friends growing up and kind of just like collaborative and complementary to each other. And got to thank mom and dad for that.
What did your parents do? Like, was there something specifically your parents did to cultivate that relationship that you can remember? Any traditions or anything like that?
Tons of like long weekend drives to pick apples or do stuff I did not want to do because I wanted to just hang out with my friends. And they're like, get in the car. We're going to find peaches.
Time together.
Yeah, a lot of time together.
Yeah.
I love it. All right, last question, not the most important question, but it is the most important to some of us. Best tacos in Arizona?
I would say Taco Cello. Shout out to Aaron Chamberlain. It's on, I think, Roosevelt and 3rd or something like that.
I'm going there. I'm going to go there right after this. I've never been there. I need to try it. Taco Cello.
Yes.
I love it. Okay. How about you, Johnathan?
For me, it's got to be Barrio Queen.
I love Barrio Queen. Love that place. We go to the one, there's a couple of them, but I usually go to the one at Tempe Marketplace. Delicious.
I like the one in Old Town Scottsdale, and I always get the chorizo con huevo, so highly recommend that.
I don't speak Spanish very well, but I think that was
with
egg
egg.
on top of sausage. I think that's what those words were.
Now I need some chips and salsa. Got a craving.
Hey, well, thank you guys for sharing the amazing story of Trainual and so many nuggets here for founders and company builders to take, and appreciate you sharing your journey with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
both.
you. It was fun.
The PHX Founders Podcast is sponsored by Arizona Venture Development Corp.